Listen, Funko, I was already all in when you announced the four brothers. But then you went and added Slash and a premutated baby Slash as well? Well, that's a done deal. Give me the whole set. Now I know what you're saying. We've gotten a ton of TMNT Pops in the past, but these are definitely different. Oddly enough, they are part of the Pop television series, even though almost every part of these is clearly inspired by the vintage Playmates toys. From the skin tones to the brown weapons to the facial expressions, these have everything to do with those classic figures. And I've got the comparisons to prove it. We'll start off by taking a closer look at them in the box, because that is, admittedly, how most Funko collectors display these things. As you can see behind the Pops, I pretty much display everything outside of the box, but I do go back and forth when it comes to Funko Pops. If you're interested in ever reselling or trading these things in, I would definitely keep the boxes, but how you choose to display them is really up to you. And without further ado, let's crack one open. The good thing about Pops is that they're never truly sealed. As long as you open the box carefully, no one will ever know you ever took them out. Unless you make a YouTube video about it and post it online. Even though the numbers on these Pops start with Donatello, we've got to start with Leonardo. And I gotta say, getting them out from behind that shiny plastic, you can really see all the great details. A lot of Funko Pops don't show a ton of detail in the face, but that is totally untrue with these. We've got the bandana, the eye expression, the mouth expression. When you flip them around, each one has a unique detail in the back shell and belt as well, which we'll get into more when we compare with the Playmates figures. Colors and style are all looking great, so let's do that comparison. Putting them side by side, you can really see the inspiration for those brown weapons. Realistic? No. But absolutely classic? Yes. Each one has a unique mouth as well, just like the vintage figures. Leo's got that side grin. And when we flip them over, you'll have to forgive me a little bit. It's a bit embarrassing with my vintage Leo, but you can figure out what it's supposed to look like. The vintage figures originally had slots for the katanas on the top and bottom portion of this part of the belt. Obviously, one of mine is broken off. But when you compare that to the new Funko Pop, they just have slots on the bottom. It's not like they're usable anyway, so I'm surprised they went for that detail change. The Pop skin tone is a little bit lighter, but honestly very close. Next up is Donatello. Just like Leo, we get a ton of detail in the face. His bow is proudly on display, and you can see his initial on the front of the belt. The back shows slots on the top and bottom for his bow, so that's accurate to the original. Comparing them side by side, again, the colors are very close. One thing that makes them look a little different on camera is that the Playmates figure is glossy and the Funko is matte. Flipping them around, I know, I've got another issue with my Donnie belt. Well, maybe a couple issues. Trust me that the Funko is what it's supposed to look like. One thing I forgot to check for when I did the initial filming was this little holster on the side of the vintage Donnie's belt. I was hoping we'd see the same thing when we looked at the side of the Funko Pop, but unfortunately it doesn't seem to be there. You probably wouldn't be able to see it anyway, but it would have been a fun detail. Next up is everyone's favorite turtle, Raphael. He's got a ton of character in his eyes, the full toothy grin, and I had to check right away for that back compartment. Happy to see that one's there. Two brown sides, big R on the belt. Let's do the comparison. I really think the colors on this one are the closest match from vintage to Pop. Funko really nailed that bright green. The only thing that would have made this Raphael figure better is if in that back holster they actually included that little triangular blade. I know most of us as kids just stuck that thing back there and it stayed there forever, so that would have been a really cool Easter egg back there, but still fun nonetheless. Style-wise, this one's gotta be my favorite. Next up is Michelangelo. And no, your eyes aren't playing tricks, his nunchucks are definitely orange. It looks like they used the same color as his mask instead of the brown they used for the other brothers' weapons. It's a small detail, but I think it's kind of a miss. The back of his belt doesn't have any detail either, which is different from the other three brothers. As a standalone figure though, it still really pops. Great details, great colors. Other than those Chuck colors, the front of the figure really looks a lot like the vintage. He's got the half grin, the big M on the belt. Again, the Playmates version is a little shinier, so that's throwing off the color a little bit. On the back, I'm not sure why they chose to leave out the weapon storage, especially when they included that detail in all three of the other figures. Maybe they just had this Mikey done first and then decided to go for all those details. Who really knows? My Michelangelo also came with some pretty severe blemishes right above the belt. It might be glue, I might be able to get it off, but I might not risk it. Alright, the moment we've all been waiting for. Dreams come true, the Funko Pop Slash is here. There are some pretty big color differences when you compare this one to the vintage figure, but overall the details are just next level. He's got all those spikes on the back shell, that tail poking out, bandana's looking good, we got that extra texture on the skin, and of course that wild toothy grin. And then if that wasn't enough, they also included this premutated Slash. This one definitely matches the cartoon show to a T. The colors and the shell pattern are right on. There was no baby Slash in the vintage line, so I guess this is their way to tie it to the TV show even more. Maybe I'll paint it blue though to match the vintage figure. Speaking of the vintage figure, let's see those differences. I wish we had gotten a hot pink weapon, at least one, but I can see why they didn't. There's just so much other stuff going on. A couple things that stand out as different between this and the vintage figure are the colors of the blades on his hands. They should be pink. And the vintage belt never came in that styling, but they came in a bunch of different colors, so I can see why they did kind of a mashup. The pop kept some of the details from the back of the belt, but not all of them, but still pretty good for such a small figure. Texture on the skin is good. They could have gone a little more wild with the Pops bandana, but again, it's looking good. So if you're wondering if you need another set of Ninja Turtle Pops, let's do another comparison. Here's the new Leonardo next to one of the movie figures from a couple years ago. It honestly looks like the sculpt is brand new. Even though they're clearly the same character, I think all of the parts are different. Very different style, different coloring. All in all, I think they stand out really well next to each other on the shelf. Then the other one I wanted to compare to was this comic book style. The comic one seems a little bit taller and definitely heavier. Of course the colors are all different, but again, I think it's a completely new sculpt. With as many turtle figures as Funko has done in the past, I'm really surprised they went brand new. They could have easily shared a leg or an arm here or there, but they decided to go all out. I think that's pretty good. And just for fun, I've got to compare the new Pop Slash to the custom one I did several years ago. I used a zombie venom pop as my base and added on all the extra details with some epoxy sculpt. I wasn't going for a complete recreation of the vintage toy, but I definitely took that color scheme. Overall, I'm pretty pleased with this one. It hung out on my shelf for years. The only thing I probably would have taken back is how weirdly gigantic that back bandana is, but it works, I guess. It honestly helps him stay standing up. But to me personally, when you compare it to the new one, there really is no comparison. The new version is definitely the winner in my book. I've got to say Funko completely nailed these figures. I love how they used all of those details from the vintage Playmates figures and brought them to these new sculpts. Really, really great job. And if they're listening, they could recreate every single vintage Turtles figure in this style and I would buy every single one. But if we could at least get Muckman and Worm, now that would be awesome. Even if you're not a huge pop collector, I could definitely see you getting into these if you're into vintage Turtles. Great job, Funko. Feel free to check out some other turtle and toy reviews on my page. Thanks for watching, we'll see you next time.